Hi, everybody in podcast land and also on YouTube. I'm James.
I'm David.
I'm Riley.
And today on the Carpool Critics Movie Podcast, we're not talking about David Fincher's 1999 movie Fight Club.
What are we going to talk? Wait, what are we going to talk? I get it.
Yeah, I had to get that out of the way.
Yeah.
So many people making that joke on Twitter. I'm
And
just
there
like,
will
let's
be-
just get it out of the way.
No more jokes about not talking about things. We are here to talk.
But then we're not talking about it.
Stop it.
The terrorists win. Okay. And if you're part of our convoy of people who watch the movie every week before the episode comes out, next week we're going to do 2001: A Space Odyssey from Stanley Kubrick.
I'm sorry, James. I can't watch that.
You must. It's very long,
All
very
right.
slow.
They stole that from The Simpsons.
Guys, don't
You hacked me.
watch this movie after 8 p.m. Don't start it after 8 p.m. You won't make it. You start early. Start when it's light out.
That's right.
It's very slow.
And have an energy drink.
David, what are you giving this movie out of 10?
While it's just a little too red pilly for me, Fight Club is filled with an honest hopelessness about men's place in the modern world that is elevated to a wider cultural importance by the fantastic storytelling and the reality-shaking experience that is this movie. 8.7 out of 10.
8.7. Wow, nice. Based on that, I was like, oh, is he going to rate it lower than me?
He's a red-pilled guy.
You've been red-pilled already.
Yeah, this movie peaks at like a 9.2, but I think that the ending kind of deflates a little bit of it. It becomes less interesting.
Wait. You give movies ratings at each point, like
I
at different
should start
points
doing
in
that,
the
live
movies?
tweeting
Yeah,
my
like-
scoring.
Like, Riley, your face is a 10.
It's not.
But your butt?
Yeah, no, it's not there.
9.9.
Well, actually, I have a pretty big butt, James. I hide it well.
Those are in these days. Riley, what are you giving this movie out of 10?
Fight Club is a poignant reminder of the possibilities that can open up when you meet some new friends and learn to truly let go of everything, including your own sense of self and grip on reality. Fun for the whole surrogate family composed of depressed and disenfranchised men. 8 out of 10.
Okay. You guys have said enough. My slogan is it's really good. It's kind of slow at the end. I'm sleepy. It's like 2.5 hours. I mean, when you look at the runtime, you're like, it's that long?
Yeah, I don't remember being
It's
that
pretty
long.
I think that your slogan is, it's just the fact that you watched this movie and didn't really take any notes or write a slogan or prepare in any way.
It's
It's that good.
You say I'm not prepared, but
It's that
wait,
engrossing.
I got
Just
things to
wait.
say.
Oh, he's got things to say.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Also, in case you have not seen this movie, it's a problem if you're going to continue listening to this podcast.
You should watch
because
it first.
You should definitely watch it before you listen. And if you haven't seen it, figure it out. Spoiler alert. This is your spoiler alert.
But what if you haven't seen our sponsors yet?
You guys, I didn't even get to say my rating, jerks.
Oh,
I'm giving it an 8.21.
8.21.
Okay.
Why the 2-1?
I don't know. I actually...
It's arbitrary.
My finger slipped, actually. It's a great movie. All right. My sponsor, today, just me, is Manscaped and their Performance Package Kit. It comes with a ton of stuff, including their new lawnmower, waterproof trimmer with advanced skin-safe technology, which helps reduce nicks and cuts. It also has their Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Weed Whacker nose trimmer, also. It's the same sound effect for everything. And they have an ear trimmer, too, for you Bernie Sanders ears out there. Also, it has their new Shears 2.0 luxury nail kit. Be smooth, everybody. Head to manscaped.com/carpool20 today and get 20% off. Plus, free shipping, free international shipping, all the shipping. And you get their Shed travel bag. I don't know why they put it at the end of the read because that is the best part. It's a good bag.
It's a really good bag.
And they even throw in a pair of their anti-chafing boxer briefs. Why not? Limited time only. Check them out. We're also brought to you by Private Internet Access VPN. PIA helps you hide your true IP address so that you can bypass geo restrictions and censorship. You can pretend you're in a different country, mister, with up to 10 devices at once. And it includes an internet kill switch or just punching meat. If your VPN gets disconnected involuntarily. PIA is available for Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, and even as a dang late capitalism screwed it up Chrome extension. So check it out at lmg.gg/carpoolcritics.
That's not in the actual notes, right? They don't want you to say late capitalism.
Well, you can.
Late stage capitalism.
Late stage capitalism.
That's what we're looking for.
Guys, this movie isn't about communism. It's about a return to agrarian culture.
Yeah, it's anarchy, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not communism.
Yeah, so let's settle down here.
I really like to view it through a Jordan Peterson-esque lens. But anyway, why don't you give us the synopsis for those of us who haven't watched it since we were teenagers when it was so cool.
Yeah,
so
honestly,
edgy.
when Tyler Durden was actually the good guy.
He was my desktop wallpaper.
Edward Norton plays the narrator who works an unfulfilling job and has chronic insomnia. He gets relief from attending support groups for victims of various diseases, but his bliss is disturbed by another imposter, Marla Singer. So they agree to split which groups they attend. Flying home from a business trip, the narrator meets soap salesman Tyler Durden before discovering that his apartment has been destroyed by an explosion. Sad about losing his stuff, he calls Tyler, who meets him at a bar and tells him that he's trapped by consumerism. In the parking lot, Tyler asks the narrator to hit him, leading to a fistfight. LOL, boys will be boys. They continue to have regular fights outside the bar, attracting growing crowds of men into their fight club. There's the name of the movie. Tyler begins a sexual relationship with Marla and reshapes Fight Club, not Flight Club, into a new anti-corporate organization called Project Mayhem, which performs increasingly disruptive acts of vandalism, troubling the narrator. He follows Tyler's paper trail, uncovering Project Mayhem chapters throughout the country until one member calls him Mr. Durden, which leads to the realization that he and Tyler are the same person. The narrator finds out Tyler plans to blow up credit card buildings and erase the debt record, freeing people from consumerism. The narrator apologizes to Marla and tells her to leave town. He tries to warn the police, but they're Mayhem members. He attempts to disarm the explosives, but Tyler subdues him, holding him at gunpoint. The narrator realizes, since they're the same person, he is holding the gun and fires it into his mouth. Tyler, quote-unquote, dies, but the narrator survives. Mayhem members bring a kidnapped Marla to him on the roof of a building, and they hold hands as they watch buildings collapse around them. Romantic. That was my first date.
Explosions.
Man, this movie's wild.
It's awesome.
As you were saying before we got into the synopsis, when you see this as a kid, you're like, oh, cool, like cool men doing like fighting and stuff. That's awesome. Like, let's go out and
make a fight club.
Yeah.
It's the first half that you focus on.
For sure. And like, I think that's true because a lot of people went out and actually started fight clubs because of this.
And there's a video game that came way later that was on Xbox or 360. Do you remember that? It was
Original
called Fight
Xbox,
Club.
I believe.
Oh, really?
It didn't have the same likenesses as the movie, but it was the same IP.
I need to see
They
this.
even had the trailer for it had like the whole first rule of Fight Club. That whole thing was the trailer.
Wait,
and that's just a
seriously?
fighting game,
Oh my god.
like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 books too. There's 2 follow-ups. Like they've.
Yeah, the
Well,
sequel got kind of panned
Because
though.
this is
Oh,
based
okay.
on a book,
Yep.
in case you didn't know, people.
Palahniuk.
And there's like actually quite a few differences between the book and the movie.
What kind of differences, Riley?
Oh,
Enumerate them.
I think for one, the biggest difference probably is near the end. Tyler is more of a suicidal maniac. Like he wants to. His main objective seems to be to go out in a blaze of glory and then like make a name for himself, and people will be like, Tyler Durden, he's great. And so that kind of explains the whole like cult mentality and the hero worship and stuff. But in the movie, obviously, he's not looking to make a name for himself. He's actually trying to make himself anonymous, and he's trying to affect some grand change in society and wake people up from this like consumerist status quo nightmare, and help them like realize that make their own meaning in their lives or whatever.
Well, I think to me that's kind of one of the flaws of the movies. I think the movie's at its most interesting when Tyler is seductive, when he's able to draw on these men, and when the switch kind of flips and he becomes like clearly evil.
Yeah.
I find the movie kind of loses its nuance, and it's just like, okay, yeah, like everything brought to this end game is always too bad. Yeah, it's not good when you're like an anarchist that wants to kill people. Yeah,
You
I
need
get
that
it.
though. That's the entire message of the movie, though. By the way, I think the author of the book, Chuck Palahniuk. I tried a lot of times, but anyway, I think he preferred the ending of the movie. I think he said that it was better. I just seem to remember that.
Okay.
But to your point, David, you need that because at the beginning, it's like everyone, like the fact that it's a schism in this one character's mind, that we're following Edward Norton and he has these multiple identities. That's so perfect because I think what the movie is saying is that all of us corporate slaves, we know, like a splinter on in our minds, to quote Morpheus, that there's something wrong with the way we're living.
Yeah.
And then Tyler kind of shines a light on this, and it seems all good, but then we realize that he's too far the other way.
Yeah.
And you need to ride that line between yin and yang to really be happy and healthy.
One of the most fascinating things about this movie to me is the fact that it confronts a real problem in society, which is this like lack of positive masculinity and male role models in people's lives, and consumerism and just following the status quo, all this stuff. Those are real problems that afflict society, but the solutions that are put forward by the characters, and like Tyler Durden specifically, are like the wrong answers. It goes completely, as you say, it goes to the other side.
I totally understand it intellectually, but I think what my bigger problem is I think the movie fails to connect the seduction to where it ends up. I don't feel like I buy why all those men are following him. Like, I get there's Fight Club and they're having these emotional reactions, but to elevate from there to like literal terrorism, I don't think the movie really connected those dots for me.
Are you saying that you didn't believe that the people in Fight Club would do that, or what do you?
Yeah, I just don't think that
it's not believable.
I think that once Tyler Durden's already flipped his switch before that point, and so I think he's lost, to me, the charisma, the magic that would help make it seem like he's like rising these men up in a way. Like I think there's like two different parts of Tyler that aren't connecting in the way, and like to me, it just makes that all those men feel like stupid, and they're not real people. They're just like, we need people to follow him. They're not like making, I don't know, and like that's the point, is that they're mindless hordes or whatever. But I find that that's a big failure for the movie for me.
I guess that's kind of true. Like they kind of just repeat back to him these like maxims, like don't ask questions, rule number 1, and they seem kind of like mindless drones.
Yeah.
So that's not as compelling as like, oh my God, you've created these like really like this insidious mindset that's just, it's wrong, but it's terrifying.
I think maybe the thing that we're identifying though at the end of the movie, because you're absolutely right, the men, the Project Mayhem members are by the end mindless drones, 100%. But that seemed like, I feel like I read that as a criticism of Tyler Durden's philosophy, where the entire thing that he's trying to do in the beginning is to break the narrator away from being a mindless drone, mindless office worker, and he's like, hey, this is going to liberate us, but the end point of that philosophy is this sort of like cult mentality and the same frickin' thing. You're just following a different status quo. You're just like putting your faith and your meaning on this other person. And I think that it was believable to me because we see how it starts. We see that there is this real ill in society, and Fight Club allows these men to be men. I mean, quote unquote men, whatever. We can talk about what masculinity is in different cultures and whatnot, but it allowed men this outlet to take out their frustration. And so because they have been given this such a great gift by this person, Tyler Durden, they're like, you're a great man, I'm going to follow you, because people want something to latch onto.
Well, I totally agree. And I think the first half of the movie does a really good job exploring that, like this void of narrative for men. There's only so many narratives that you can kind of fit into. You're either the alpha, the beta, or the sigma now, I guess, is the new thing. Like basically there's the alpha or the beta, and like it's I think that's way more interesting, like the men first coming to Fight Club. And I think that's like, I buy that, and I buy like the allure of Fight Club. Because like as a man, like it kind of gets like your red blood cells pumping, and you're like, oh yeah. But the taking it from the vandalism, where like the biggest act of vandalism we see is them like destroying a statue in a Starbucks, to like literal like destructions of city blocks.
Yeah.
That's just like, it just doesn't really.
You don't think that you think it's too unrealistic, or it hasn't been demonstrated that they can make the jump's too big? Or?
Yeah, the jump's too big, I think.
I don't know, man.
Well, it's definitely,
like ISIS exists,
or
did, and it's very similar to this. Like they have huge unemployment rates. ISIS comes along, they're like, hey, look there's a power vacuum. We'll give you $400 a month to join us. You're a Muslim anyway.
Yeah.
But they don't.
Then they just like tweak their interpretation of it. And
I totally believe that this is possible. I just don't think that the movie did a good job showing how Tyler is indoctrinating these men to become these people.
Really?
Absolutely.
I feel like they did a good job.
I think because I agree. I think that's one of the strengths of the movie, is that they do a really good job of portraying this real phenomenon of men like needing guidance. If they need a purpose, they need like a reason, and like often it's like a physical thing. It's like we want to be warriors.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
There's so many like self-help group like cult things that are like, men are warriors and you just need to find the war for you.
Yeah.
Like that really does sell. And I don't want to stick on this point too long, but I just think that like Tyler Durden, we as the movie focuses more on the narrative of the story, it loses a little bit of like the thematic nuance with Tyler. And like you understand what is going on. Like it's very clear point by point. But I guess as I became disillusioned, I found it harder to like buy into what was going on in the movie.
Here, I'll say this for your point, because I agree that the movie doesn't really feel like it could happen, especially when he's like going around to different cities and it's like, oh, there's Project Mayhem chapters all over the country. And it's like
everyone knows him.
Yeah, it started as this little fight club and now it's like completely pervaded American society to the point where he walks into a random store and people are like, hello, Mr. Durden. It's like, okay.
All
Like,
the police.
At that point, it starts to feel less like a real story and more like a parable or something.
Which is fine.
And I'll give you that. But I think that like within the bounds of that sort of like unrealism, I'm kind of like, I think that they did a good job of showing how the men are indoctrinated because they started the Fight Club. And then as they transition to Project Mayhem, he only lets them in when they sit outside the house for 3 days and 3 nights being berated and belittled constantly. And only then are they allowed in. Their identities are erased. They shave their heads. They wear uniforms. It's like textbook indoctrination. And I'm like, okay, I get it.
And I love this scene too when Meatloaf is dead and like he's like he had a name, and they're like, I get it. When you die, you get your identity
You're
back.
like, no, yeah, that's cool. That's like the self propagation of the cult. Like it makes its own rules. And
he's there standing there, and he's like supposed to be the leader. But I mean, it's interesting because I wonder if like Tyler baked in intentionally this idea that even he cannot transgress against the rules of of Project Mayhem or whatever.
I guess what it comes
he's
down,
trying to stop it, and they're just like they're ignoring him basically.
I think I guess I find the movies at its most interesting when I feel like I'm questioning myself. I'm questioning my own beliefs, my own things, and like I'm like, hey, Tyler Durden is kind of like attractive, like not physically, but like his philosophy at the beginning.
Not physically at all. Brad Pitt is not
Brad Pitt,
attractive.
if you want to come over.
Not gay.
I'm gay.
No homo, dude.
But yeah, like
I think
You're distracted by those abs right now.
you know,
I want to say that's the body that everyone wanted was like the Brad Pitt and Fight Club body, and I feel like that goes to
until 300 came out, then everybody wanted that. That was the new.
But I think to me that goes
to
to kind of sell the idea that I think this movie doesn't actually do enough to like make Tyler Durden not enticing.
really?
Yeah, that there's that like there is a reading of this movie that so many people are like, yeah, like it's kind of missing the mark, and like it's making it too it's enticing, and it's selling Brad Pitt as something else, and like as adults we were able to be like, that's obviously not the point of the movie.
Well, people are being selective though, you know. It's just like people who are, I don't know, like Ku Klux Klan members who are into Rage Against the Machine or something. You're like, you're just listening to like the lyric of the song you want and not the other one.
Or they're not listening to the lyrics.
But I like the criticism that it lays out pretty briefly of masculinity at the beginning, because in a way you could see that this movie just applying to anybody, because it's really just about, you know, being an individual versus being part of a collective. But it does specifically target masculinity, especially because there's like different dimensions of how you can be masculine, right? You can be witty and funny. You can have a lot of earning power. You can have physical prowess. You can have sexual prowess. And they kind of just spell a few of those right at the beginning, where he works a lot and that gives you buying power, so you're a consumer, and that's not working for him, Edward Norton's main character. Then he meets Robert Paulson, Bob, who was a bodybuilder.
Meatloaf.
And look at him now. So that form of masculinity didn't really work either. And then they offer them like this new alternative. And it's actually funny because as I've divulged before, in my undergrad, my minor was in gender and women's studies, and one of the projects I did was on involves like bodybuilding in men. And one of the things that I keep reading the literature again and again was that there are just fewer outlets for men to be classically masculine in life, like to be the warrior who went out and killed stuff. And so the gym is like one of the few modern outlets where you can still just go and
physical,
in public.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
No, I think it's. Oh, sorry.
Go. They just got neutered. They don't have that anymore. And then also we have this society of nuclear families and being totally individualistic, where you are a perfect snowflake, where you live in the suburbs, isolated from everybody else. You're unique. No one else is like you. Where actually maybe we're more the same than we are different, and we should live together. And so that's kind of what Durden is selling at the beginning, and people like it, and they eschew those other things, come together, have meaning in their lives, because we're all atheists now. We don't go to church, and they get some sort of meaning. And initially it's positive, but then it just goes too far.
Yeah, and I love that too. That like he goes to these group therapies, and he's actually having like a positive experience. Like I don't think he's feeling bad about it, or he's like, I don't think it's twisted beyond the like he probably shouldn't be there. But I love that when Marla shows up, how her being there kind of shines a light on himself. It reflects on him how he's doesn't really belong there, and he has this crazy sense of ownership. And I thought it was such a good, like, tying into like the masculinity. It's such a male privilege thing of like I belong here, you don't belong here, but it's like, no, you don't belong here either. Like you've taken ownership of this thing that like you have no right to be at, and like you're protecting it because like you feel like it's yours.
Yeah, and it's also an interesting idea in the sense that he feels isolated, right? He's like going to his job, he's buying these things in order to fill this void in his soul or whatever, and then he goes to these support groups and he's getting the support, quote unquote, he needs, in the sense that he is in an environment that allows him to cry, even though he doesn't feel like it shows that he's friends with Bob. Yeah. So maybe he has some other friends, but it seems like on the whole, he doesn't know these people and he doesn't like connect with them on a personal level.
He has no community.
Right. But he goes there and he kind of like is using the trappings of community. He's taking the benefits of these support groups while not actually contributing anything and not participating directly in it.
Well, he is participating because he's crying back and stuff like that.
He's participating, but you can like...
He's not sharing their pain.
Yeah, and the idea of these support groups is that you go and now you're part of this community. And he's not really engaging in the community. He's just extracting the value and then getting out of there, right?
True, but he's also trying to find some meaning or find some community where there is none in a society where like you have to have testicular cancer in order to meet up with a group once a week and be vulnerable to each other and stuff like that.
Well, but that's the funny thing. You mentioned church. I'm like, that's kind of funny because like people just go to support groups all the time for no real reason, just to hang out.
Yeah, but outside of church though, it's not a super common thing to have men
gather. For sure.
And like they exist. There's like a lot of like men help group, and I think just like in this movie, like it can be really helpful, and to find community and find belonging, it's really important. That's not just a masculine thing, but so many of them go too far. It's like it'll become a financial thing. It'll become like you have to participate. You have to keep paying money. You have to do this, commit this time.
You're talking about support group or church groups,
or just support groups in general. Like I know someone that runs a group, and I'm like, oh, okay, good.
I'm not going anymore. I kind of wish there was secular church because we were like, I am an atheist and I like atheism, and I think lots of people should do it. But I do recognize that as a culture, we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and there are benefits to religion that I wish we had more of, like going to church and meeting. I think we should have secular church. I think every Sunday it'd be great if the people who lived in my part of town went to a place, watched a lecture that was about introspection, and then had lunch after.
Absolutely,
that would be awesome.
No, for sure. I mean, I think that this movie talks a lot about. Well, it doesn't talk about, but a huge theme in the movie is this sort of like Nietzschean idea that the death of God has left a void, that people are like. Their masculinity is suffering because education is failing them, religion is failing them, their family units are failing them. There are all of these things that used to give meaning to people's lives are gone from society, and so it's leaving this void. And so, the people that we find in this movie are dealing with this void. And so Tyler Durden comes along and says, this is the answer. Life is meaningless. Self-improvement is masturbation. Self-destruction is what you want. Destroy yourself, and in that destruction find, the real purpose, which is just to like, what? Fuck shit up?
Yeah, he doesn't really answer that. But that doesn't matter at that point, right?
That's one of my favorite parts of the movie when they're on the bus and they see an ad for
the male
Gucci,
bottle,
underwear or something. And the narrator is like, is that what a man looks like? And Tyler Durden is like, self-improvement is masturbation. Now self-destruction, and he just trails off. And I'm like, self-destruction is what, Tyler Durden? What's the end of that sentence?
Yeah, that's why he's a false prophet.
Yeah, exactly. But the point I originally wanted to make about the narrator going to the groups is that he's kind of like he's pretending to participate in community while still kind of being isolationist. And then Marla coming in, it exposes his lie because she's also doing the exact same thing. And, it's like they're both, that community is not there, and that's why he seeks out the community.
She does belong more in the testicular cancer one because she has no balls.
At least I don't have my balls. Yeah,
they're kind of in a community, really. Those two.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's like, I feel like that's not super nailed in this movie. Is that is him like holding back on liking her. Like I watched some analysis that was like, oh, it's only when he accepts that he likes her that he can kind of be free. And I'm like, that's not really in there, is
Or
it?
you think it's incidental?
Yeah, or I feel like it's kind of in there, but like it's not like his romance in him with her like unlocks anything. Like being true to himself, maybe.
Yeah,
But
their romance is weird.
What I don't get, and I mean like this is a very specific thing, is why does self-destruction kill Tyler? Why is the act of like suicide or like being willing to kill yourself? Why is that the act that kills Tyler? Because Tyler's all about self-destruction. So like that should like give him power. He should be like Mega Tyler.
I don't know.
Interesting.
You just need some kind of visual thing of like, I'm doing a thing to exercise this demon.
Lame.
I mean,
what would you do?
I don't know. I can't think about it in a second.
I mean, I think it works. I feel like on a biological level, it's like, okay, maybe it like blasted out the part of his brain, which is kind of like that's a stretch.
Cheap,
I don't think
right?
there's a point in going there.
That's a stretch, but I think that maybe psychologically, him going to the point of self-destruction fully to that level, he doesn't need Tyler anymore because he has self-actualized. It's not so much that like Tyler is feeding off.
But then is Tyler right that self-destruction is freedom?
I think so, probably. There's definitely an element of truth there.
Well, I think all that it really takes is a decision from Edward Norton's character to make a decision.
It's like,
did I just say a decision, make a decision?
Hell yeah.
He's committed. He's saying, I'm going to live my life this way.
Exactly.
And he's taken action that is definitive.
I think that the hitting rock bottom is part of that. Like in order to make a decision, in order to move forward in a direction with full intention, you have to kind of like shed the baggage of like expectations that were placed upon you by your socialization, wherever that happened, right? I think that part of the reason that people get stuck in this status quo of consumerism and like, oh, I'm going to order all the things from the IKEA catalog is because they have been taught that that's what you need to do. And as much as they would say, oh, I need to do something important, I need to go on a trip and I need to help people or something, they can't do that as long as they kind of keep one foot in this consumerist world where you are buying things you don't need and you are thinking that you need that fancy car. You have to get rid of that mentality before you can go and do stuff.
Eat, pray, love.
Well, I think as much as I've criticized it, the movie absolutely has a thematic justification for kind of having like this split personality or like this split in ideas, because like this movie is all about how there's like two parts of us and like there's the part that we want to be and there's the part that we are, and somewhere in the middle it's what we really are. And I think that the kind of chaotic nature of the movie works to serve for that. So.
Yeah, I think that middle road is something that is missing for me in order to give it a higher rating than 8. I think for me, I know this is a subjective criteria, but for me, it's important that a movie has some sort of path forward. A movie like this is descriptive.
Yeah.
It's
a criticism.
Yeah, it's a satire. I loved what I saw an interview where David Fincher described it as a pitch black comedy. And I'm like, yeah, I guess. I mean, it's not a movie where you sit down and you're like laughing the whole time, but it is something that in retrospect, you're like, that's hilarious. Totally. Or just, there are certain points of the movie where I do laugh because it's
like
so
when
silly.
when the bag of fat gets cut open on the
that was disgusting.
Yeah, so good.
When they're splicing in the porno frames.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing I find interesting.
But...
Like, how do you guys feel about that? Because like when I was a kid, I was like, hey, that's so funny. But like now I'm like, yo, he's traumatizing those kids.
Yeah, well,
like,
that's why it's black comedy. It's dark.
Yeah.
That's why I don't like Black Santa, I guess. Dark, bad Santa.
I didn't.
Don't like Black Santa. Okay.
Sorry, guys. That's not what I meant to say.
I didn't really find the pornographic splicing in ever funny. Well, especially because it shows the kids and they're like traumatized.
Yeah,
like,
one kid's
horrible.
like crying. That's
yeah.
I'm
like, we're supposed to laugh at this, but yeah, it's a pitch black comedy. And I prefer when a movie has some sort of like path forward where we say, here, there's problem in society. Men are disenfranchised. Oh, and here's this possible solution. Join a cult and blow up all the credit card buildings.
Dude, you would love Christian movies.
No, I would not. I've seen them, trust me. Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
There's evil. There's people who respond to it the wrong way. There's people who respond to it the right way. I like when there's people who respond to things the right way.
You're saying this movie doesn't offer you a path forward?
Not necessarily. I think that the narrator decides that he's like, this has gone too far, and then he works against it and succeeds eventually. But we don't really, that's why the ending seems kind of ambiguous, because we don't really know where he's at the end. We know that he's doing something that like any decent person would do, try to stop somebody from blowing up a city. But we're like, what's the philosophy now?
We know what he's
Don't blow up
not.
cities is not enough of a philosophy.
We know that he met his limit, and he's like, I'm expelling this part of me.
Right.
And we know that he's found connection with another person,
Yeah.
which he didn't have before. They're holding hands, watching the buildings go down.
For sure.
But that's basically it.
Yes.
I think what you're saying is you'd like to see some kind of denouement where he, I don't know, has a hobby or something. Like he's on a hockey team or something.
I mean, I don't know exactly what the movie would. I mean, I don't know. I would have to think about it for a while before I. It's such an iconic movie, and it's hard to like imagine how to mess with it. But if like the way that, because we just did Lord of the Rings, it's in my brain. The way that Lord of the Rings presents the ideas of hope and despair, they present a complete philosophy in one way or another. We have scenes where we expound on ideas and possible routes of action, and this one doesn't really do that for the middle road.
I feel like, to me, this movie, in terms of its nihilistic approach, is kind of like a 14-year-old, where it's like, see, like, there is nothing.
Yeah.
There is no hope. And like an adult nihilist is like, there is nothing, so this.
Yeah.
And like there's like a conclusion in this movie is just like, nothing matters,
right.
man. Check it out, dog.
Yeah.
Nothing matters.
Dude, I'm so edgy.
Yeah.
The 14-year-old approach is to be like, nothing matters as a way to make your parents angry.
Yeah.
And an adult actual nihilist who might like go around and blow up stuff. Yeah, okay, that's a different philosophy. This movie isn't that so much. But that's an interesting point to bring up, I think. The fact that, we talked about God earlier, and there is this scene, the scene with the chemical burn. I love it. That's
the midpoint.
Yeah.
Where the stakes get raised, there's no turning back.
It's such an awesome scene because it packs so much. I don't want to say like philosophy, but it packs like everything. Every line from Tyler Durden is just so thick with meaning.
Is that the scene where he says like our fathers were our gods and our fathers left us, and now we're God's unwanted children?
I wrote down the quotes that I think are the most important. Can I just go through it real quick?
Can you do some kind of voice?
No.
Okay.
The first
soap. Wait, can you just do random voices that aren't appropriate?
The first soap was made from the ashes of heroes, Bruce Wayne. No. This first soap was made from the ashes of heroes, like the first monkey shot into space, which is why the people are called space monkeys. And then as he's feeling pain, the narrator tries to go to his cave, and Tyler's like, no, don't deal with it the way those dead people do. This is the greatest moment of your life, and you're off somewhere missing it. Our fathers were our models for God, and if our fathers bailed, what does that tell you about God? In all probability, God hates you. You can neutralize a burn, but first you have to give up. You have to know, not fear, know that someday you're going to die. It's just like, it's a short scene, but it's so intense. And I feel like I'm just like on the edge of my seat until it's over and he neutralizes the burn. And I feel like I almost have to pause the movie at that point to break down everything that's happening.
To me, that's the point of the movie that I start to enjoy less.
Really?
I find that scene like kind of silly. And like, I guess as someone that's like just started going to therapy, I'm like, this is dumb. And like, he's actually trying to use coping techniques that are like healthy and he's learned. And like Tyler is like breaking through. And like, it's not presented as if
the whole idea.
I don't think so. I don't think the movie's presenting like Tyler's like lying to him and tricking him. I think the movie's like Tyler's got some truth to share right now, dog.
Well, I think he does. But I think
that he's wrong.
No,
I just think he's straight up wrong.
But here's the deal. I think that there, like, as I say, there's kind of a middle road here. I don't think that fearing, experiencing pain and fearing it and trying to go to your happy place, I think that is a thing that people should do in certain scenarios. If like you're getting a painful surgery and they can't use anesthetic for whatever reason, and you are able to use these techniques, like sweet, you definitely should. But at the same time, at the same time, the perspective that like you should embrace pain and that this is life, this is truly living. Don't go away and try and get rid of pain. Mm-hmm. If you try to destroy all the pain in your life and hide it, that's not living.
And it's not only just pain, it's just all kind of moments of humanity, right?
Exactly,
it's
exactly.
Like being on your phone and taking a video of a concert instead of just letting it go through.
I wrote down that the takeaway here is almost like the same one that's in Soul, where it's like you shouldn't just try and like have your happy little life and do your happy things and like do the things that make you think are gonna make you happy. You should embrace life in all of its glory and pain. And this moment is something that he will never experience again, or he has never experienced. So it's like, be here, be present. It's like Buddhist it's like Zen. It's like you're just in the moment, man.
Yeah, but it's such a stupid point. Like a prisoner of war should be like I'm gonna fully experience this torture and pain.
Whoa.
I'm gonna be so present. Like it's a stupid conclusion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
But it's also-
I think that the problem is like presenting two extremes isn't presenting the middle as an option. It's presenting two stupid extremes.
Yeah, but
that make no
individuals
sense.
and nations often work like a pendulum, where if you've swung so far one direction, you swing all the way the other direction before you kind of resolve in the middle. And that's what happened. Like the society that's presented at the beginning of the movie is so depraved and meaningless that he goes all the way over. And that scene is like kind of the tipping point where you've passed the middle, and now you're climbing, and he's going to see if that approach is going to work for him or not. And it's also kind of like a culty indoctrination mechanism.
Totes.
Where you've got it's like a hazing thing.
Yeah.
You want to join this fraternity, you have to do this thing you don't want to do that's going to suck.
Yeah.
Well, now you've done it, and now we're brothers.
I guess, yeah, for me, that's just the point that Tyler starts spewing stupid shit that I'm like, that's not even interesting anymore. It's just like stupid.
See, okay, so
You don't like the quotes that Riley read?
No, I don't.
in real life,
I think they're dumb.
Really?
Yeah,
There's
sorry.
it's
Not
such
you.
good-
I think you're a genius.
It's such good writing. There's just like so much. It's like thick. You know when someone like writes something and it's just like I can see so many layers just embedded in that.
Thanks, Chuck.
Chuck seems like a cool guy.
Have you
I
read
guess,
any of
but-
his other books?
No, but he seems kind of crazy also.
I read one of his books when I was traveling. I was at some hostel where they just had like a free kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what the hell it was until I was like, oh, that was the guy who did Fight Club. I don't even remember what it was called. It was about some like 14-year-old in hell.
I want to say that I'm not trying to defend the actions that Tyler took in that scene. I'm saying that philosophically it is interesting because the ideas that he's putting forward have a kernel of truth to them. It's not that he's justified in doing what he's doing. Obviously, he's forcing this experience on this other person. You're not meant to do that, obviously. I think that the fact that he is the same person, like the two, like a lot of their scenes together, in hindsight especially, read as someone struggling with themselves. If this is an external person doing this to someone else, obviously, it's just horrible. It's just abuse. But someone choosing to face this themselves is, I think, a beautiful thing. Obviously, I don't want people to go around putting chemical burns on themselves, but when faced with pain or when faced with an opportunity to do something that ends up being extremely painful, learning to embrace the pain and working through it as like a real experience that you're having that is part of life and accepting it, I think it can be mentally healthy.
I don't want to stick on this point too long, so let's move on. I think like it's all undone by the fact that it's abuse.
Gom
Like, it's
Jabbar.
Gom Jabbar. Sure.
We're back.
And we're back to Dune.
Somehow we focused on things that I don't like, even though I gave it the highest score. So I want to get into stuff that I do like.
Wait. Gom Jabbar.
What's Oh, the pain.
The Dune thing we talked
The
about last
Dune
time.
thing.
Well, that's why you guys like it, because you brought Dune into this movie.
We already talked about it last time, but the Gom Jabbar is a box that he sticks his hand in Dune, and it's a test to see how much pain you can endure, and that's someone else doing it to him. But I think that is, I've already gone over it a bit. But anyways, you can move on now.
You're basically saying that the whole thing where like if you can separate yourself from the pain, then you're kind of a human, and if you can't rise above your own emotions or basal instincts, then you're still kind of an animal.
Yeah, I think that one of the most adaptive mindsets that someone can adopt is life is suffering. Life is suffering, but we try to make it a little better while doing it. So life is not an opportunity to be as comfortable as you can be. Life is suffering, life is pain, and on top of that, we're going to try to make it a little better. That's why you make it better, because life is pain.
I don't buy that at all.
Really?
I don't think that I think that that's such a defeatist attitude where you're like everything's going to suck unless I'm constantly working for it to be good. Like,
no, I think that calling it a defeatist attitude is misunderstanding the position. It's simply saying that it's the Stoic position. It's that,
I think Stoicism is stupid too.
Really?
Yeah, like
I love Stoicism.
Really?
I think it's great.
No, you're not Stoic at all though.
What are you talking about?
Like you experience things. Like you're.
Do I?
Yeah.
I don't really go out much.
I think you guys got to lay down your definitions, because if you're operating with different definitions of
Yeah.
Stoicism, then you're not going to get anywhere.
I think we're operating on mostly the same definition. I mean, if I had to actually define it.
Okay. It sounds like, do you agree with this, Riley? What you've just laid out is kind of similar to again, Jordan Peterson type of thing, where he thinks that the meaning of life isn't the pursuit of happiness. It's the pursuit of meaning.
Totes. Yes.
That's kind of what you're saying.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Okay, look, I just Wikipedia'd it, and this definition is good enough for me. Stoicism teaches the development of self-control and fortitude as a means of overcoming destructive emotions. The philosophy holds that becoming a clear and unbiased thinker allows one to understand the universal reason, logos.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how I feel. I feel like the main thing in my life has been, not the main thing, but one of the things that I've tried to do in my life is control my own emotions. And so, it's important to me.
Okay, sure.
I'm going to pump your tires here with this cool Aristotle quote that I heard recently that I think you kind of embody, which is, it's a mark of intelligence if someone can consider a thought without adopting it.
Right. Well,
so that's kind of what we're talking about with this pain experiment as well. You know, like he's letting all of this into his mind and manipulating it and looking at it from different angles. But at the end, he rejects it.
Totally. Pain enters our awareness. Emotions enter our awareness. All of these experiences are happening to us. But and this is why I kind of liked the idea of I say that there's an ego missing in Inside Out, because these emotions and pain happen to us, and we are a conscious observer who can decide what to do with these things that come at us. It's really hard, and it takes training, and it takes a lot of work. But I think that with time, as people mature, as people grow, maybe it doesn't happen until you're ready to die, but you can learn this skill of, I'm feeling an emotion right now. I'm going to choose what to do with that emotion. I will either embrace the anger and use it towards something, or I will suppress it.
I will keep my hand in the gom jabbar.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. You wanted to talk about something else.
Do you
Dave.
think Marla
really
Singer's hot? I just can't decide. Does she have stinky feet?
I think
Tyler definitely
you talked
doesn't
about
shower.
your favorite lines in the movie. My favorite lines are when the narrator embraces the dramatic irony. Like stuff like, yes, these are bruises on my face. Yes, I am enlightened. And it's just as an audience, you're just like, yeah, he's fucking stupid. Or like when Meatloaf is just like, he was born in an institution. He sleeps 1 hour a night. He's a great man. And you're just like, yeah. And I think,
Well, it's cynical.
yeah.
The movie is taking a cynical.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think I appreciate that.
I think that I guess that's a problem for people watching it who have not kind of encountered these philosophies before, where they might see this and think,
Yeah, he is enlightened.
He is a great man.
Yeah.
Tyler Durden is a badass. I want to be him.
I want that body, though.
Yeah, well, the body is something I was going to bring up, because that same scene on the bus where they're looking at the guy and they're like, oh, that's what we're supposed to achieve, aspire to be. Yeah. And then the movie itself
He
later
looks like it.
glorifies Brad Pitt's illustrious physique. He's in good shape. He's a good-looking guy.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to that paragraph that accompanies that photo that everyone used for their desktop wallpaper. The one that ends with, I'm free in all the ways you're not. It's because he has that fancy car, that red convertible, but he just stole it. He just jumps in and drives away. He just does whatever he wants.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think even little things in the movie are so good. Like the fact that it's a story about how lost our masculinity is in the modern age, and it's the support group is literally a group that lost their balls. It's it's there and it's subtle, and it's not like the movie drawing attention, be like, hey, look, see, they're effeminate because they don't have balls. But it's there's constantly these little things that are building the world and how it all ties into the themes for the first half.
I also like that the presence of a woman is what kind of remedies it.
Totally.
And then the end is the savior, I guess.
Well,
you know how locker room talk and stuff, and kind of the shittiest kids in your school are the ones who are on sports teams where there's just a bunch of guys in a room and no surveillance.
Yeah.
It's it's just kind of, and companies are like that too. Diversity actually does make things better to an extent, right? It's having other people around kind of tempers it and brings you to a more moderate position.
Totally.
It de-radicalizes.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that even at the end she helps, but at the beginning she destroys. And he's so unsure of himself that the presence of a woman totally makes him feel unsafe. And throughout the movie, he can't put Tyler and Marla in the same room. He's unable to, because his idea of masculinity is better than women. It's more powerful, and he can't put them together. And it also works on a story level because he's got a split personality. So she can't see him.
Yeah,
so
that's good that you cleared that up, because I actually was going to ask what you guys thought about the fact that they couldn't be in the same room, because he's in the same room with Tyler and other people all the time. At Fight Club, Tyler is acting and he's acting with other third parties all the time. So it's not just the fact that she's an outsider or third party that they can't be in the same room.
Wait.
It has to be because of what you said, like an actual separation. He can't have them together because they are mutually exclusive.
They don't say in the movie we can't be in the same room or anything, right? He just says don't mention me.
I think he says
when she grabs his dick and he kicks her away, then they keep appearing and disappearing. I think in that narration he's like they were never in the same room.
Yeah, it's voiceover.
They can't be in the same room.
He says they were never in the same room. Yeah, I mean obviously that's a question about how that works when they're both in the room with Project Mayhem members. And I mean it's clear that the Project Mayhem members see one of them and they don't see the other. You know, it's at certain times he is himself, at other times he's Tyler, and other times he is the narrator imagining himself as a projection somewhere in the room while he is actually being Tyler, you know. Yeah, and
then there's times where it's like he's interacting with Tyler, like he's beating himself up, he's having a fake fight with nobody. So it's like when is he in any one of those states? Who knows?
I feel like there's almost a supernatural element of this where, especially in the last fight in the parking garage or whatever, where Tyler Durden's beating up the narrator. There's one part where he drags him along and he's being dragged and he's kicking while he's going, but it cuts to a security camera and it looks like he's being pulled. Like his hands are up here. His hands are up here, but he's like skirting along. He's not in a position that he would be able to propel himself. It like the only explanation for the position that he's in physically is that someone is grabbing him.
That's kind of cool.
So I'm like, it's almost like there's a supernatural element.
Well, there's
in
the
the
practical
movie.
element of making the movie, and they did that with some kind of, like they yanked him with like a cable. But they maybe shouldn't have. Depends on what they're going for.
Well, yeah.
Maybe if it's really just in his head, they should have just had Edward Norton kicking himself along the hallway.
I think that it's more visually impressive though when it's like, it's more fucked up than just him beating himself up. Like there's some other level to this psychosis.
Yeah, maybe. I feel like it's maybe like the human mind is more powerful than you think or whatever, and you can create these like constructions that actually can do things.
We haven't even really touched on like some of the other themes. Like I love all the shit about corporate negligence. I think it's so like savage and cynical in a way that I really enjoy. Like
when they're talking about the cars that
he has to break down the cost, and like if it doesn't add up to more than C, it's like we just don't recall the cars. And like even that when it's like the plane and like Tyler's kind of seducing him, and he's like, you see how like what the oxygen's for is to make you high so that you don't do anything while you're dying.
Yeah.
And like all this stuff, and it's like they keep bringing it up, and I can't remember the other examples, but. Like that's what I love about this movie is that the themes are really layered and there's lots of stuff going on, but it never feels unfocused.
Well, that's because that theme kind of dovetails with the first one because a lot of what we believe we're supposed to do in our lives, like consume, like keep up with the Joneses, buy a house, get a car, it's all for business ends. And so our country has a strong economy. The way that we do that is we each work hard and then spend all of that money. But at the end of the day, it's really just so we can sell shit.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I love how, like you say, that this movie has a lot of different themes and a lot of different meanings it's going for in it, and that is one of the things I love about it so much. Like, man, I think one of the reasons that I don't enjoy it as much as a ride as much is because it's so dense, and I feel like I'm working when I'm watching it. I'm trying like so hard to analyze every little thing. I mean, so the struggle for meaning. This was actually. I don't know if this is a meaning. Oh yeah, okay. So one of the things that the narrator says when he is crying into Bob's bosom.
They're called bitch tits in the movie, aren't
tits. Yeah. Let's use the proper term. He said, that's the point when we see him first let go and he allows himself to cry. Mm-hmm. And he says, losing all hope was freedom, which they kind of repeated a number of different times throughout the movie again. But that idea is so interesting because that we were talking about it before. I kind of mentioned how you have to shed, it's like the hitting rock bottom. You have to shed these things that have been put upon you in order to move forward and like actually do something that you want to do in your life. Have you guys heard of the YouTuber called Losing All Hope Was Freedom?
No.
So it's confusing because his channel name is just LAHWF in capitals, like LOF. And everyone's like, oh, that's just like a silly acronym or whatever he used man, I wish you guys had seen him. He's great. He used to be a part of the Mormon church, I think.
Okay.
And he left because he's like, I basically came to a point where I didn't believe this anymore. And he moved forward and is kind of like struggling with things and like going on a journey or whatever. But I was like, oh, is that what this is from? That is, it's such a great theme in the movie, and I love it.
Wow, this is such a half bomb. What did this guy do? Why would I watch this YouTuber?
Oh,
is he crazy?
He does also.
crazy shit?
Okay, so yeah, the YouTuber's great. So he started out as doing kind of like the pranks on. He would go onto college campuses and set up a hidden
Oh my God,
camera.
this is exactly the same as the beginning of the movie.
Wait,
Then he
how?
blew up. They're doing pranks, basically. Like, oh,
Yeah.
we're gonna
But a smiley face.
Oh, later in the movie, sure, yeah. He does like pranks on people at college campuses, being super socially awkward. But then he's kind of transitioned into doing all sorts of different things. He interviews people from like a million different walks of life.
I thought you were gonna say he had some kind of story where he related that he hit rock bottom and then.
Well, he did. Yeah, he relays that in a YouTube video. I don't want to talk about this a long time. One of the themes in the movie is the struggle for meaning, and losing all hope with freedom is a way for him to say like, okay, the meaning that I had didn't work, and I'm going to go look for another one, which is cool. There's the anti-consumerism meaning, which we've kind of talked about a bit. I love the quote when they're talking in the bar and Tyler says, people are watching Martha Stewart, Martha's polishing the brass in the Titanic. It's all going down. And he says the things you own end up owning you. I love that. I love the themes about masculinity, the idea of self-destruction being almost necessary in certain aspects. It's so thick.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel like you can watch this as like a ride? Is it like entertaining to you?
It's like Splash Mountain into body fat.
So you just like really
I think
don't
it does
like...
slow down though.
Yeah?
About 3/4. Like I think that I probably watched this movie 3 or 4 times in my life, and I'm pretty sure I've fallen asleep or been sleepy every time.
I 100% agree. I think that like the later part of the movie is, it's more focused on closing the narrative threads than like opening up more questions. And I think the movie's at its best when it's posing questions, when it's like, it's showing you kind of like interesting ideas. And like the last part is like, well, okay, there's this plot and he has to find out what it is and he's got to stop the plot. And like,
Thank God it ends when it does, actually. We don't need a denouement. We need it to be
agree.
over.
Interesting. I don't know. Yeah, I don't feel that same sort of like, oh, it sucks at the end as much, but I think maybe because I'm like so bought in on all these like, I'm like, what does this movie have to say? And I want to know what it has to say.
And I think a thing that it kind of gives up too is more of the experiential cinema of it, where the first part, it's actually like, there's a lot of really clever filming bits. Like even when like he's describing his insomnia, the way that it's cut and it's like kind of jarring and it's moving between shots. Like it's like an experiential film. It's not just like narrative, which the later half devolves into. Or like, I think one of the things that's really clever and really subtle is when the narrator is talking about how much he hates Marla, and the way that the camera is moving is it's keeping her in the shot the whole time, and he's talking about her. But as a human, when you see things that are out of focus, your eye wants to bounce off of it. But because he's talking about her, your brain is like, I need to look at it. So you're looking at this thing out of focus while your brain is telling you, don't look at this thing. And so like on a physical level, on like a literal
Yeah.
You hate her too?
You hate her too, and you're annoyed by her. And it's
Yeah.
like, it's such a brilliant, simple thing. And the first half of the movie is full of stuff like that.
Yeah, and they do those like the camera going into kind of macro. Like now we're underneath the heating element of the stove.
Yeah.
And most of those look pretty good still.
Yeah, they did, and that's why I was asking if this was before or after Panic Room, because remember that was the movie where they go through like a keyhole and out a
Yeah,
window,
yeah.
and Fincher likes those little zooms.
You can definitely tell that it's CGI
Oh, yeah.
nowadays, but yeah, it looks pretty good
It
for
just looks
being
like a video
CGI
game.
from way
I
back
love the
then,
sex scene. I was like, it just looks like a Mass Effect sex scene or like a Cyberpunk sex scene.
Yeah.
When his face is like blurred out, and
Well,
he's
it's them like on top of each other. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it's 3D models that are like
So
special effects.
apparently he used the same type of setup as they used in Matrix
For the sex?
for the sex scene because
same year, 99.
they're basically in one pose and they're not moving, but the camera's moving. And so they have that same thing with the bullet time where it's like a circle of cameras and they take images from each camera and then like of a single moment. And then they just kind of go around. I think it seems like they kind of turned it into a 3D model because it looks kind of CGI-like, but apparently they did actually do photography for that.
I didn't think it was that 3D model-y looking.
Yeah.
But to your point about the beginning being just rich with awesome shit, it totally is, because you get all these cool facts about cars and about like how to make bombs. You get him going to all these like support groups when he's bouncing around all these
it's
support
so
groups,
interesting.
all these different diseases. Very interesting. You meet Marla. She's totally a wacky character.
Yeah.
All of that is just so novel, and I think if you only watch the first half of this movie, like you'd just be satisfied still.
Yeah, well, it's
Well, not like narratively, but they could just like play that on repeat in malls or in video stores, and it would be like a good demo reel.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, like how you said that people have a selective memory about this movie, and like I kind of want that. Like, while Tyler Durden has an era of mystery, he's so much more interesting than when like the full picture is unveiled. Same with like Hannibal Lecter. We talked about Silence of the Lamb last week. He's so much less interesting the more you know about him. You want like just a little bit at a time, like to have this air of mystery. And as soon as that shroud is removed, it's just like, man.
Yeah, if he's like, my favorite show is Wheel of Fortune. You're like,
See, yeah, you said something about him not being as like. You think the movie could have done more to make him more interesting or more attractive
You're talking about Durden?
a personality? Yeah, Durden.
I think so. I think in the second half, I find him just less interesting.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just because like I find his ideas like silly at that point.
I think that's an interesting point because the book, as I said, he's kind of like a homicidal maniac, and as we get closer to the end, he is just like murdering people for no reason because like in the book he represents a force of chaos much more than in the movie, because in the movie he's a bit more like he embodies an actual philosophy, and so in the movie they changed him quite a bit to make him more relatable to the audience. He doesn't go around and kill random people. He makes sure the buildings are empty before they destroy them. His goal appears to be the transformation of society, not so much, I'm just gonna fuck shit up.
I wonder though if that kind of goes to be why I feel that way, where the blowing up the building was the natural endpoint of Tyler Durden that was killing people the whole way, where like that's the natural endpoint, whereas this is a different Tyler Durden, but he still gets to the same endpoint.
Right.
And I wonder if like that might be part of why it feels just like a little disconnected.
Maybe.
Where like it is a different Tyler Durden and there's still blown up credit card buildings, which wouldn't do anything, by the way.
Well, but
in 1999, there was backup servers and internet.
Well,
and
I guess that's they don't really talk about it, but like they imply that there's Project Mayhem people all over the country, and they're blowing up these buildings in this city, and maybe they're doing it in all the other cities too. I don't know.
What do you guys think about how they handle the big reveal and how they handle foreshadowing throughout the movie?
Let's talk.
I think they nailed it. I think they did such a good job.
It's one of those ones where on a rewatch, it's almost like there's so many clues.
Yeah.
It's so obvious.
Yeah.
But the first time I watched it, I had no idea. Like I went in and like not spoiled, and like I was like shocked when it hits. And like you said, like when looking back or rewatching, you're like, oh yeah, the clues are all there. And what I love about the reveal scene in particular is that they're not just like revealing, they're also going deeper into the ideas of the movie. Like he's giving the philosophical speech and revealing at the same time, and it's like you're getting both. You're getting the explanation as to what already happened, but you're also getting information that will help later. And I think like that's so masterful.
Right.
Before he ever meets Tyler on the plane, there's these like cigarette burn type of frames inserted where you can see just a flash of Tyler Durden, which is, I guess you're just confused as to what that is on the first watch.
Yeah.
But then later it kind of cements like, yeah, he's in his brain
The whole time.
And then the fact when there's the scene where Edward Norton's character explains who Tyler Durden is, and he shows his past, like working as a projectionist, and he's like breaking the fourth wall. And then during those scenes, Tyler also gets to break the fourth wall. He also gets to talk to the audience. And that's kind of like a big clue right there. Like, why did both these characters get to do that? But you don't really know that because you don't know what the rules of this storytelling are.
I honestly can't remember whether I was fooled or like at what point when I was watching the movie originally, at which point I was like, oh, they're definitely the same person.
I think it's Marla's involvement is really what tips you off. Because she starts, you can see the way that she talks to Edward Norton's character.
That's true.
She's expecting different results because she's like, he's gaslighting
so
her.
Cold,
Yeah, particularly when she shows up and Tyler is taken off and all the Project Mayhem people are there, and she's like, who are all these people? And he's like, I'm sorry, Tyler's not here, okay?
Yeah.
Tyler isn't here. And she's like so offended by that. And I'm like, maybe that's a point.
I think even the first time she sleeps over and he wakes up and he's like, what the fuck are you doing here?
Yeah, she's like, you're a real jerk.
Yeah.
That's the first clue, but it's not as explicit as the clue that Riley said. That's when they actually want the audience to start to know.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like big time.
And it's hard to watch this. Maybe that's also why I didn't find it as much of like a ride this time, because knowing that twist, it's kind of like watching the extended version of The Lord of the Rings. You want to have the experience where you are like fully immersed, and then you want to go back for all the details. It's kind of like this rewatch, having the twist. It makes a lot of the themes and the things in the movie more interesting, but yeah, it's less of a ride for sure.
You know what's weird is this movie came out the same year as American Beauty, I think. And when I was watching this movie, I was like, this is just like American Beauty. He goes into his boss's office. he starts making a scene and threatens to blackmail the guy with his knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
And say, I want pay for the next year. I want severance pay, or I want my salary in perpetuity. That's exactly what happens in American Beauty.
Huh.
Well, spoiler alert for American
Yeah, I
Beauty.
haven't
It's
seen
been
it.
a long time since
You haven't seen it ever?
No.
Oh, it's on the list. We got to do it now.
Gotta do it. Is that Kevin Spacey?
Yeah. As
Hey,
a
but-
guy who likes young people.
But hasn't he been? Wait, we talked about Kevin Spacey last time, and everyone in the comments was like, he got exonerated, and
He didn't get charged. He didn't get exonerated.
okay, so not guilty is not the same as innocent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Doesn't matter. He's a good actor, and that's what we're focusing on.
And American Beauty is an interesting movie.
We kind of talk. We've talked about Marla at various points, but what do you guys think about her as like a character in this movie? Because I think that, as we've said, she fulfills an important function. There's that line said earlier, we're a generation of men raised by women. I'm wondering whether another woman is really the answer we need. And you say that, like, as he's in the support groups, she kind of intrudes on his space. So there's this like, the starting point is that women are the problem, sort of. And at the end, she comes in, and part of the reason why he can achieve this actualization, and we have this feeling that he is heading down a better path, is the fact that they are together now, and he's accepted that he loves her. But as a character, I think she kind of bugs me because it's like she's sort of an accessory. She's not active.
What's the term? Manic pixie dream?
Yeah, she's like way more depressed version of a manic pixie dream girl.
Yeah.
She's so quirky.
Yeah, exactly.
She's
And
so quirky and suicidal.
Do you think, is there a statement about the state of the world or the state of femininity in her character, and how she's suicidal and kind of blasé?
I think that overall the movie has less to say about femininity and more about masculinity, which is kind of an interesting idea because
they should make a sequel, Fight Club for Women.
well, honestly, one of the things I wrote down, I was like, could this movie have been about women?
You'd have to fundamentally change it.
It would. I think it could be about women, but the club wouldn't be a fight club.
Talk club.
It would be a gossip club or something.
Oh,
Well, that's what
savage.
traveling of the
Yeah,
sisterhood
that's
pants.
sexist.
It's travel.
We're talking about female and male
Sisterhood
archetypes,
of the
okay?
traveling pants.
Well, that's interesting because one of the things, I don't know if you guys saw this, one of the things that Chuck Palahniuk, the author,
Palahniuk.
said, sure, one of the things that he said influenced him to write this book was the fact that at this time, I don't know when he wrote the book, early 90s, but at the time, there were all these movies, the Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood, the Joy Luck Club. There are these books about traveling pants. There are these movies about women coming together and like forming these sisterhoods and like what femininity means in the modern context specifically. And he's like, we don't have that kind of story for men. We don't have a story. He said there's Fight Club and the Dead Poets Society.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of...
And The Matrix. He said that people talk
really?
about like getting red pilled, just like they talk about
yeah.
Fight Club.
Unfortunately.
No, I think that the female analog to this movie is Fleabag. Have you seen it?
Well, the show.
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen the show.
Oh, that's a mistake. You gotta love it.
You've made a horrible mistake.
You-
In what ways do you think it's the female?
Well,
analog
because
of
like
this?
she has her struggles. She breaks the fourth wall, kind of talks to herself. It's similar.
But it's
Does
not
it talk
about
about
her
her
identity.
Superficially.
Oh, sure.
I think there's not really that many movies though about like growing, like building a cult.
Yeah. I think that if I could break this...
a need for community.
Right.
Well, there's no female cult leaders in history because they're not.
We need to change that.
They're not as fucked up as we
Guys,
are.
let's start a female cult. Female-led cult.
Yeah, that glass ceiling's
Actually,
gotta
no.
shatter.
There was the Bogwan. He's the leader of that cult. There was
The Rajneeshis?
Yeah, Wild Country.
Yeah.
The leader was actually that dude, but
Oh,
the
right.
de facto operations manager
Right.
really was that chick.
Yeah.
The COO.
But that doesn't... yeah, I guess that I wouldn't count that because she's not the guru. She's not the actual head.
But he was like an absentee guru, and she
was.
Yeah.
But I think that he's still like the mythological leader.
I think
Yes.
we would need that if we're going to say it's a female-led cult.
yeah.
That she has to be the actual,
I'm ready.
I bet it exists.
I'm ready. Let's
It's
go.
You're not allowed in,
Guys,
dude.
it's 2021. It's
no,
past time.
Men can worship the woman leader.
T-
Can't I? Can I join?
If she says you can.
We'll find out.
I was gonna say that quote about there being Fight Club and the Dead Poets Society. I think those are two stories that you're talking about Fleabag being kind of an analog of it, like superficially. But I think that if you go down to the deeper levels, these stories are about how men can find meaning and confront the problems of society. Mostly, it's about reclaiming masculinity or whatever, finding a masculinity that is healthy, as opposed to, we're going to go trash shit,
Well, if we're talking about the biological essentialism view that we talked about earlier, where men were warriors and then now there's nothing to kill and we're just kind of useless and everyone can have jobs, not just men, blah, blah, blah. If that's an attack on masculinity, then you might take the view that femininity is intact because women still get to bear children and now they have the double and triple day.
Well, yeah, obviously, yeah. I mean, I think I get what you're saying. I think that femininity obviously has changed in the modern era in the same way that masculinity has. But I think that there is a crisis of masculinity more so than there is like a crisis of femininity, where one of the things that, I think the fact that he says we're a generation of men raised by women, it's true. I think when did divorce rates start skyrocketing? I saw but
they're flattening out now.
And they've been declining for like 40 years now or something. But in that, from the 40s, I think up until like the 70s, divorce rates just completely skyrocketed. And so there was an explosion of single parent families led predominantly by the mothers, not the men, right? So,
but it's also teachers. Like most teachers are women as well.
Yeah, education has definitely been like feminized in the sense that like the vast majority of teachers have been women for large chunks of history. I think particularly at this time in the 90s, these guys, when would they have been born?
They're like Gen Xers.
Yeah, and they are a generation of men raised by women. I don't know what the demographics are now, but I think that at the time when this movie came out, I think that is definitely, it's talking about a real truth that people have been raised by women. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that...
Well, they need examples of positive masculinity in their lives.
They lack positive male role models.
It's like the whole world, like literally the majority of the world has daddy issues.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, for sure. Where was I going with this?
I don't know.
So I'm saying...
Fleabag, it's the best.
Okay, so this all started from the original proposition that, like, could this movie be made about women? And I think that the fighting thing, not trying to go on this, like, super essentialist male-female archetype thing, but the fighting thing is a archetypically male situation. So, yeah.
Handmaid's
I
Tale.
think if you're making...
haven't
yeah,
seen.
that's about toxic femininity for sure. There's like...
Handmaid's Tale?
There's both.
Yeah.
Like the wives
toxic
or whatever.
Everything.
Yeah, toxic everything.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think...
Toxic religiosity.
But I think why Fight Club wouldn't work as a woman's movie is that like violence isn't like what most people consider toxic femininity. It's like just a different thing. And so like fighting for men is like toxic
No,
masculinity.
it couldn't be a Fight
it has
Club.
to be
It has to be
absolutely-
some corollary to what femininity is about.
Yes,
Right.
for sure. For sure. Guys, I love the scene. And the more I think about it, I love it more and more. When Lou comes to the Fight Club, like the owner of the establishment, and he's just like, the fuck's going on? And he kicks the shit out of Tyler.
Yeah.
And then Tyler uses the way that he's been beat up by literally the owner of an establishment to fight back. Not to fight back, but he takes the pain that they've thrown on him and he like spits it on him. And I'm like, that's a microcosm of his whole philosophy.
Right.
Is like, take it, and I'm going to give you exactly what you gave back, and you're going to hate it so much more.
Yeah,
because
because that guy represents someone who has ostensibly succeeded in masculinity, right? Like he's an owner, he's a big kind of gangster type, he's rich, and even he can be a convert.
Yeah. Well, and even just like the anti-corporate side of it, like he's literally the establishment.
Yeah.
And
In that scene, I don't think he's meant to be a convert so much as he's meant to be the antagonist that is beaten by Tyler using the pain that he has been inflicted with. But you say, do you like that? Do you like that philosophy and that?
I don't
scene?
like the philosophy. I just think that scene's extremely successful at like diluting the whole ideology into one thing.
You don't like the idea of somebody being attacked or abused and using that pain and that abuse to get revenge.
But I think
like Batman.
Tyler was also like, he
yeah.
was kind of inciting it, wasn't he? Like he was.
Not
I mean, I don't want
really.
to say he was asking for it, but like.
Well,
but-
he was just being neutral. He was just standing his ground. No, he didn't even like stance up or anything. He was just like hanging on the bar.
He kept getting up instead of staying down, and that's what pushed Lou to hit him again and again.
That's what I'm
and
saying.
again.
It's neutral. It's not like he didn't give up and he didn't attack. He was just kind of there.
But he's trying to incite Lou into tapping into the same thing that they all tapped into in Fight Club.
Right. Well, yeah, I guess, I mean,
Yeah, you're
that's-
only supposed to
I feel
stop
like,
fighting once you decide to stop fighting, and he just never decides to stop fighting.
Yeah, I feel like that's a positive reading of it, where like, oh, we're looking to get Lou into the Fight Club as well. But I think the purpose of that scene more is that look at how badass Tyler is, and look how he can control himself and uses pain, and this is how he's indoctrinating these
And then they
people.
lift him up like Jesus.
yeah. Do they?
Yeah,
they
he,
do.
he like lifted up like this. Oh, I love it.
arms out.
It's a great scene.
Yeah, sits down. Somebody like puts a cigarette to his mouth. Somebody immediately throws out a lighter to
Yeah.
like light his cigarette.
There's a lot of cigarettes in this movie. Almost
Yeah.
every scene with Durden, he throws a smoke off.
He's either eating or
Yeah, a
getting
lot
rid
of
a
smoking.
smoke.
I'm like, was this back when like having characters chain smoke was like cool?
Yes.
Still?
Yeah.
That's not cool anymore. I mean, you can still have characters smoke, I guess, but I think they do that a lot
I
less.
want to talk about why the narration in this movie works so well.
Yeah, because that's actually a big criticism you see, like, especially if you're the type of person who reads screenplays, like, for a living. You see voiceover and narrator, you're like, yikes,
Yeah.
big red flag, this person should probably cut this. It works here, I think, probably in part because, or in large part because it's an adaptation from a book.
Yep.
And because it's an internal story, like, it's actually his personalities. You kind of need that.
I think though why it works the most is that he's a ridiculously unreliable narrator. And so like even though he's telling you everything, you can't really trust what's going on. And as the movie goes on, there's kind of more layers of distrust with the narrator. And it's never used for like straight exposition. There's always like one layer of twist to what he's saying. I find this movie's like nailing the subversion, and they use the narration as a tool for subversion, where they set something up with the narration and then undercut it
Right.
with what's really going on, or the other way.
What are the examples of that when he says one thing but we're showing the opposite?
Well, I think, like I
Earlier
said,
on.
like he's like, I am enlightened.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarcasm.
But it's not sarcasm. He believes it. And so the audience is
Right.
like disconnecting from the narrator, whereas normally the narrator is just like narrating feelings or like,
Right.
I remember when the sky was purple.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because I think that when I hear a character like that say something like that in the movie, and I know that the film is telling me he's not enlightened, I get the feeling of sarcasm. I'm like, the movie's being sarcastic,
Yeah.
the character isn't, but yeah.
Yeah, I think when I was at school, they taught us don't ever use narration unless it's ironic or like counterpoint to the visuals. And I think like this movie, even without the narration, would work really well on some levels. Obviously, the narration makes it all connect.
Yeah.
But they aren't not telling the story visually. At every point, they're telling the story visually.
Totally.
If you're using narration just to get people up to speed, like 2 years passed and then he went this way, which we might see in Barry Lyndon if we ever cover that, which is it's a Kubrick movie. It's awesome.
Just having a narrator just like straight up tell what happened. Yeah, that sucks.
Well, like, or if because there's gaps, because if you're covering a book that's way larger and you need narrator to just like fill in stuff like that, I think that's when it's a no-no.
yeah. Well, and especially when it's a disembodied narrator. Like
Who doesn't represent a character?
Yeah. Like if a character is narrating, I felt this way and he felt this way. It's like, okay. That's,
Oh, the worst. I hate.
can
My
forgive
least
that.
favorite is when it's like the grown-up version of a kid telling the story. Ooh,
yeah.
What about like Sex and the City style?
it's okay. I don't love Sex in the City, but I'm not the target demographic, so
I only
Right.
have sex rurally.
Visual storytelling helps a lot. I think that the scene in the movie that exemplifies that is when he's doing the IKEA monologue or
Oh, I
whatever.
love that.
It's a slow pan throughout his apartment, and it's just like populating with the IKEA things.
With the
That's
price.
another example of like just cool, fun to look at, nice
Yeah.
editing
Yeah.
at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, I love that. I think that the narration in the beginning is. I feel like it definitely would be a lot worse movie if not for the narration, because we go so deeply. It embeds us in the narrator's mind.
There's no other character for him to talk to. He can't explain this to somebody else.
Totally. And the way that he's delivering it, just kind of in like, I bought all the things and I bought this and I felt like the amazing supreme blah blah blah. Yeah.
I am Jack's
Yeah.
inflated duodenum.
I think Edward Norton's such a good cast because like he's obviously great at emoting, but he's like just one of those people that like you're like he is my eyes. I allow it.
Yeah.
Like you just I don't know.
I love Edward Norton.
Yeah, he's right in that perfect zone of like good looking but not exceptionally good looking.
Yeah, whereas,
he's a real good everyman.
He's
Yeah, the
interesting
roles-
looking.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
it was Brad Pitt, you're like I'm looking at Brad Pitt do stuff.
Yeah.
Which is fine for Tyler Durden because you're like he's this like mythological weird.
yeah, but
thing.
if they flipped, it wouldn't
sense.
make any sense.
Edward Norton's like voice is perfectly nasal. Like it's just a perfect. It's a perfect. It's not up here. It's like a normal voice down here, but it's just nasal enough that it gives it a little bit of character. I love it. Love his voice.
You should just talk like him all the time.
Just down like this. Hi guys, welcome to Tech Linked.
I had a
We're doing tech news, I guess. I don't know. Whatever. Life sucks.
Edward. What I had like a few questions about like the internal logic. Like what I think the movie explains most of what happened, like how they saw Tyler or whatever versus the narrator. But what did those dudes coming out of the bar see when? Because like in the first time you see in the movie, Tyler and the narrator are fighting, and then it draws a crowd, and that's kind of what starts Fight Club. What did those guys see?
Yeah, that's
It
actually
shows
a
what
great
they saw.
It shows him beating himself up.
Yeah,
But how would that compel people to start fighting each other and have a fight club?
Yeah.
It's a bit of a...
Maybe
It's
they're
like
just
a-
like, oh, this guy's so weird, but he's onto something.
he just
don't
looks
know.
like a crazy person. Like
Yeah, but obviously you have to be a little crazy just to get in a fight for no reason.
it's not the same as just like two guys fighting, and you're like, oh, we're just fighting for fun. And you're like, really?
Well, of course it's not the same, but I think that the reveal helps us to color all of these things that we've seen already in a different light. Like we originally, I think this is why people who put Tyler Durden on a pedestal are idiots, because the movie clearly shows you he's not a cool guy.
Yeah.
He's a psychopathic construction of this crazy guy's mind. Like we see that all this time, the narrator hasn't been having a cool time with it. He hasn't been in a bonding experience with a bro. This isn't a story of like men bonding over like shared trauma or whatever.
Yeah.
This is a story of a guy talking to himself for 2 hours, going crazy and crazier and crazier and crazier until he like figures out that he's going crazy and tries to stop it. Like, so it's, yeah, I mean, well, it's different than two guys fighting each other. 100%. He's insane.
Yeah, I guess like within the cartoony like reality of this movie, it kind of makes sense that they're like, oh, grr, grr, grr. And you're
Yeah.
not supposed to think about it too much. But yeah, if I saw a dude fighting himself outside, I wouldn't be like sick.
Yeah.
But if I saw two dudes fighting, I'd be like sick.
I also sick, dude. I also just want to say that there are real people in the world that have dissociative identity disorder, and I'm not saying like insane in that way. Obviously, this is a fictitious situation where he's falling asleep and then his alter ego, it's like, that's why I say it's supernatural. It doesn't seem realistic.
Yeah,
he falls asleep and then Tyler's supposed to be doing all this stuff while he's asleep.
I couldn't find anything. I was trying to find like what's like a psychiatrist thinks of this movie. I couldn't find anything. Like, is this a realistic depiction of like?
Yeah, I think
what
that
it
it's
looks
not,
like?
which is
Okay.
why most people probably don't talk a lot about like the real phenomenon of dissociative identity disorder in relation to this movie.
Yeah.
It seems like there are kind of supernatural elements. So
Yeah.
I'm like, eh.
It's not quite what it would look like.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
fair. Yeah.
Good.
What's like what is the line between a help group and like a cult? Like what point does like a men's help group become like red pill?
Monetization.
Monetization?
A lot of the time.
Oh, really?
You
A lot
think?
of the time. Yeah, there's what is the new thing? It's like based from QAnon, but it has to do with like there's going to be these disclosures, and then there's going to be a new order, and we're all going to
Oh,
be
the Great Reset?
maybe. I had a friend who's a friend of a friend who's unfortunately just like we found out she's just like mentally ill, but she was like making all these Instagram videos and stuff, like telling, just talking about all this, and then it goes on for like 2 months, and then in the end it culminates in her being like, and here's my GoFundMe page. Like, there it is. Finally.
Well, I think that there is like, I don't know if you would call like the Rajneeshis thing a cult. I guess they were for profit at the end. They were like trying to get money.
I think they had to give up their possessions and goods.
Right.
I think they maybe donated it to the cause, but they definitely committed their labor to it.
Yeah.
And did a lot of building of their community
For sure.
and stuff like that.
I think that monetization is probably a good benchmark to use for like cult. I think that maybe losing personal autonomy probably is also something where people like are, punished in group for thinking or doing or saying certain things.
Isolation's a big part of
Yeah,
it. Like
yeah.
in Scientology, you have those people, suppressive person. Like Nicole Kidman was labeled a suppressive person to. Okay, so when they were filming, this is not the episode for Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, but when they were shooting that movie, it was in like Sweden or something, and so he was like at the height of his Scientology at that point. But then they went off for this shoot for like a year, and he was away from that community, and he was with her, and she was labeled a suppressive person. So you're supposed to cut ties with those people who were gonna pull you out of the cult.
Right, for sure. Do you guys heard of Nexium?
Nope. Sounds like a
Oh, is that
Bitcoin-
like the local modern one?
Well, there was a chapter in Vancouver or whatever, but I think the main headquarters was in New York. But it was, do you know Allison Mack? Is that you guys?
Is that a
don't-
rapper?
No, she was like a she was a Canadian
Was she
personality.
had like
an
Popular
actor.
Mechanics for Kids or something? Is that her?
Maybe she was
don't
on.
know.
I think she was on YTV on something. Oh, she was on Smallville. She's Chloe from Smallville.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Oh yeah, that sex cult.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sex cult. Yeah, and so Lauren and I watched. It's called The Vow, and it's like it's delving into it. It's really good.
Oh,
It's
I heard
it's on
I
HBO.
was recommended that. I want to check it out.
Yeah, it's really good. But yeah, one of the things in that cult is, you have to cut people out who have left the cult. You can't talk to them. And if you're saying anything that's like criticizing the cult, then you are deemed a troublemaker and you're like slowly expelled.
Yeah.
There are financial incentives for people to stay. Like they're like, give me collateral. So people are like, I can't leave, or they have this
my money,
information on me.
yeah.
People, they made them like give them nudes
Totally.
and stuff.
Yeah, that's the same with the Hutterites. So everyone knows what like Amish people are.
Yep.
Yeah.
But in Alberta and other parts of Canada, there's these Hutterites. They live in colonies. They're religious. They're not allowed modern technology unless it helps them work. So they're allowed like a new truck, but they have to take the radio out. They're allowed a new tractor and stuff. And if they leave, they can willingly leave the colony at any time,
Right.
but they're not allowed to come back.
Yeah.
They all have glasses because they're so inbred.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. My auntie was a teacher at a colony. I got to visit a couple of times. It's very interesting.
I'm a tourist.
Yeah,
walking
I
through.
literally was given a tour.
Oh, that's
And then
interesting.
the girl who gave me the tour, she was 16 and she had contraband. She gave me and my sister a tour. She showed us her room and she had like the secret spot in her room where she had her contraband. She had a flip phone and she was like, "What are your phone numbers?" Because she obviously didn't have that many numbers.
my
So she
gosh.
wanted people to text.
That's
Man,
awesome.
that's cool. Yeah. Okay, moving away from cults for a second. I want to talk quickly about the Raymond K. Hessel scene. The scene where he goes and like points a gun at the cashier, the
Oh yeah,
convenience store clerk.
Yeah.
That scene kind of is in the middle of the movie, and it's neither here nor there. But I feel like that scene was such a good little mini movie in itself. It's like a ride.
That's the part where it's Durden starting to go a little farther than
Yeah.
Norton originally thought he would. And he doesn't know if he wants to go that far.
And I'll get back to that, but it seems a little strange to me that at some points the narrator seems to be on the complete same page as Tyler Durden, like they're going around smashing in cars' headlights with baseball bats. But then the next scene is this one where they walk up to a convenience store and Tyler says, meet me here on the back. And he's like, is that a gun? He's like, meet me here on the back. He's like, oh, no, don't do this or whatever. He goes around and Tyler takes the clerk out to the back and points the gun in his head and starts asking him questions. He's like, give me your wallet. He's looking through, sees his name, asks him what he went to school for, what he wants to be. He's like, I want to be a veterinarian. And eventually he's like scaring him and frightening him out of his mind. He says, if you don't, if you, in 6 weeks,
Yep.
in 6 weeks, if you're not on your way to becoming a veterinarian, I will find you and kill you. And the guy, and he's like, now get out of here. And the guy runs away and he's like, I was going to die, but I'm not going to anymore. And the narrator says, why'd you do that? And he says, tomorrow's going to be the best day of Raymond K. Hessel's life.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, because, obviously that's a horrible thing to do to a person, but this is one of the things that makes Tyler Durden a bit more of a likable, not likable, but
Yeah,
but empathy.
You understand his principles.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, interesting. At first I was horrified.
Well, it's an ends justify means kind of Machiavellian thing.
For sure. And obviously, it's like, if someone was doing this, I'm not saying do this, okay, guys? Just disclaimer up front. If someone was doing this and it led to a marked, improvement in society, is that justified? You're not actually hurting the person. You're
Well, you
scaring
are
them.
though. You
How?
are though. He's traumatized now.
Sure, I
He
guess
probably
so.
locks his doors and stuff after that.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, okay. Guess we shouldn't. No debate.
Yeah, we were gonna start a pointing guns club.
No bullets.
Obviously, yeah. And then that's the other thing. The narrator looks in the gun. There's no bullets in it. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, but that's why I found his philosophy so interesting, because this cashier is clearly somebody who's just like locked into this status quo. He's like, this is my life. This is society. This is where it has put me. I guess I'm a clerk for the rest of my life. And he shook it up. He was traumatized, but it's a net improvement.
Yeah, nothing a couple weeks of therapy won't cure.
I'm sure he did go and take some classes, but 8 months later he was just back, just on his
Yeah,
ass.
and obviously Tyler isn't
On his
actually
ass
checking
again.
up with these people. But
Maybe he is. Maybe he's a really kind, compassionate person behind the scenes. He just puts out that tough guy persona around the other guys.
I like that he lives in a shithole because it just totally makes sense, right? It's like you blew up your apartment. You could only afford one apartment, so naturally you're gonna go squat somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And so,
It's
like,
just
if
squatting.
Tyler Durden just had another house that he owned, it wouldn't make any sense. You're like, okay, wait. So with your other identity, you went and like got a mortgage, but you don't remember any of this. It has to just be squatting somewhere.
That's a.
And then Marla actually has to also be weird enough that she would hang out with a guy who lives in a shithole. Right? If she had her shit together more, then it just
so
wouldn't
weird.
be feasible that they would even hang out.
Man, seeing them go into the basement to turn the power off with all the water down there, it just gives
awesome.
me anxiety every time. I'm like, get
It's
out of there.
Truly a disgusting house. Like the water dripping in the brown water. Ugh.
Yeah, just everything is like moldy and damp. Like, how are you?
The water when he's brushing his teeth and it's just brown, that's the most
I don't
disgusting.
Yeah, that's also a reason why I think I take some off this movie because I'm just like, it's just uncomfortable. Like, I'm fine with being made uncomfortable, but like, it's interesting because this is David Fincher's, apparently, this is his early, that's his deal. Like, Seven was kind of grimy like this too. But then later, when we were talking about doing David Fincher movies, later, I think of House of Cards, I think of Social Network. I'm like, this is
Very clean and clinical.
Yeah, that's in my mind because those are the movies I watched first before I watched Seven, and I don't think I knew David Fincher did Fight Club. So I was like, this is weird. I guess David Fincher moved from this sort of like dirty, grimy deal to like politics,
Do you guys think that the
which is super clean.
the gore with Meatloaf, like his brains blown out, do you think that like actually adds something, or does it just add edge?
I think it's supposed to be shocking. I don't know. I didn't think it was gratuitous.
It's a consequences moment.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Real consequences.
I mean, I think that if they like got a close up on it or something, I feel like I would feel differently. But
They got a pretty close up in there.
Really?
I feel like I smelled his brain.
It was like a really quick shot. It was like they peeled the thing off and it was like, and then cut.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not like in like Midsummer or something like that where it's like,
Yeah.
here's a big
Yeah.
hammer to the face again
That's
and again.
fair. That's
Yeah,
fair.
yeah, for sure.
What do you think about when he beats the crap out of Jared Leto's character and just maims him? Is that like his like low point?
Angel face. Yeah, he just wanted to destroy something beautiful. I guess so. I don't. When does that happen?
That's after a big moment of frustration, right?
Is that him getting close? Like, is that as close as he gets to Tyler Durden, and then he
Maybe.
backs off after that point?
Maybe.
That's like the all is lost kind of moment.
Yeah.
I think it's like a. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's if Tyler is his sort of surrogate father, I think that's sort of a rebellion against your father type of situation where he thinks Angel Face has his favor because when they go and they pose as waiters and they threaten to cut the city councilor's balls off or whatever he is, Tyler has a moment where he like puts his hand on Angel Face's head and he's like, okay, go over there, and it's like a benediction sort of thing. Or not Bennett, whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, he gets jealous, so that's why he beats him up. I don't know if it's a low point per se. I feel like the low point is maybe realizing the depths to which Project Mayhem has sunk and how involved he is. Like, I think Bob dying is the low point. Because then he starts to reverse it.
Okay. Well, that's all I
Angel
have to
Face
say
is
about this movie.
on the way down.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Riley, nitpicks, hit picks?
Yeah, do I have nitpicks? Oh, sorry. Okay, real quick to go back to Marla then, because her lack of being active and her lack of characterization in the movie even, I think, is something that could be better. In the book, there's another difference that's between the book and the movie. In the book, it's revealed that she has cancer. So she...
So she was at the support group legitimately, at least one of them.
Yeah, or she... I forget whether she has cancer and it's in remission or whether it's like actively killing her, but... Regardless, there's more of a reason in the book for her to think that her life will end in the near future. And in the movie, they kind of just like play it as she's suicidal because she's dark that way. And she thinks that her life will end. I think they say...
No reason to live.
They say specifically in the movie, Marla was of the philosophy that her life could end at any moment or would end at any moment. So you might as well walk through traffic or whatever, you know? And I think that it's a bit more compelling to have that extra characterization. And I don't think it would have cost them to put that
Not
in the
much.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. She's kind of a non-character. She's just there to be this female presence, and that's it.
I think she serves a little bit more than that. Like, but I agree. She doesn't feel fully realized.
Yeah. I would have liked her to be a bit more of a
Oh, it's just,
What's that?
That's nothing.
She's like,
Do you know
don't
what
say
else
that.
wasn't fully realized?
What?
The choice of using the Pixies as the final song.
Oh, really?
Don't like that at all.
Why not?
It just feels like
It's iconic. Iconic.
when you have those fan trailers of like, this is like a Wes Anderson movie, or like the Oscar bait, the movie, the trailer. It felt like that. It just feels like it's like a shitty fan moment.
Well, you got to go back like 15 years when this movie came out.
Yeah.
Or wait, how many years is this now? Whoa, 22 years?
I don't know the lyrics of the song. They might be appropriate. I just feel like musically it doesn't really fit.
So
I like it fits musically.
I looked
like
up the song, and the lyrics are basically nonsensical. It was inspired by the guy scuba diving and seeing a fish chasing him. And he was like, what do fish think about? Where's my mind, dude? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like basically nonsensical.
Word salad.
Yeah, and I think this was really one of the main reasons why anyone knew who the Pixies were because they used this song. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It sounds good.
I really like the final image.
The lick is great.
When the buildings are going down and they're holding hands and he's like, you met me at a really weird time in my life, and that song plays, like that's like awesome ending.
Oh, it's great. Just in terms of like the raw sense data. Like even if the lyrics of the song don't really make sense and what he's saying, like I don't know, we've talked about the ending being like a little incoherent in terms of like what happens now, but just the raw.
It's like a GIF. It's just like a little encapsulated this sweet
pleasing.
little moment.
I agree that for the gift. But like, is there any other points in the movie where there's pop music that plays?
Popular.
Pop music, dude?
Did it just feel to me? I think you might be right, and like maybe if I was in a different mood, I would have enjoyed it more. But it feels like it's so out of left field. Like it doesn't feel like there's any other music like that in the movie.
I feel like there was a bit of thematic connection because the chorus is saying, "Where is my mind?" and his mind, he's just blown part of it out with the gun, and the whole movie is about.
But if the rest
him
of the
struggling
song
with
means
his own
nothing,
No,
like,
he's
could
just
they-
saying if it's a movie with a score the whole time, and then suddenly there's a pop song in it, like right at the end, it just seems like it's.
I mean, I don't know.
Tone Promises. Remember?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a. I mean, I guess it is technically a pop song, and that it's like was on the pop charts maybe, but like it's sort of the same sort of alternative rock thing that there was a lot of going on in this movie. We didn't talk about the score at all.
I found it pretty invisible.
Yeah,
In a really good way, where it's
Yeah.
just like
Again, this movie has amazing sound design.
Yeah.
Is it Fincher himself, or does he work with the person?
Probably
This is
both.
something I need to find out because all of his movies, they just sound better
Yeah.
than anyone else's movies.
totally like the scene when at the beginning he's going through all the therapy and he goes to like the meditation session and it's about the cave. But there's like layers of the city that are incorporated, but then that bleeds into the next scene and like there's a musical cue, but it all bleeds together. I was like, this is smooth as fuck. And like thematically, having the sounds of the city break his immersion of the meditation helps the audience to connect with like this inability to really hit nirvana. Oh,
Right.
it's fucking good, man.
Yeah, I so the song the score was done by the Dust Brothers. Never heard of them, but they worked on albums by the Beastie Boys, Beck. They did the soundtrack to Fight Club. Oh, they worked on Mbop by Hanson.
Great track. I love the da-da-da-da. That part's the best part.
But yeah, I think the score does incorporate a bunch of like grunge sort of rock sort of influences. So I think that it didn't seem that out of place to me.
I guess to me the Pixie song doesn't feel that grungy. Like it feels pretty sanitized.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's not that grungy, but I mean the main guitar lick is like heavy distortion. I don't know. It's like
Yo, Sum 41 has a distortion.
Okay, guys. All right, that's enough.
that's enough.
That's enough. Next week, as I said at the beginning, we are doing Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's about time.
It's
about
the
time.
movie's about time.
And space.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's also about time we
The
covered
movie's about
Kubrick.
space time.
I think it'll be the first of many.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't want to say right now we're doing like a series where every 3 weeks we're going to do one or something. We're going to do a lot of more new movies in 2021, but
New Kubrick movies.
we're going to break the seal on Kubrick for sure.
Kubrick or Kubrick?
I don't know.
2 bricks.
Let's call him that.
2 bricks.
Guys, email us at carpoolcritics on Twitter or email us hello@carpoolcritics.ca.
And then email us on Twitter.
We'd love to hear from you. We do.
Email Twitter about us. That could work.
That would work for me. I'm banned. So please do that.
Oh, more importantly, tweet Twitter to unban James.
Yes. Thank you.
At Twitter support. Do it now.
Bye.
Love you.